It started in a swamp. It was here, in a stretch of mosquito-infested marshland, that Louis, the 27-year-old King of France, decided to construct his new palace, near a small and unremarkable country town called Versailles. His courtiers were far from impressed.
It was almost as though Louis had deliberately picked the worst possible site for his magnificent palace in order to prove to the world that his will was greater than nature.
Louis had a sentimental reason for choosing Versailles. It was the site of his father's old hunting lodge, and as a boy, he'd played and hunted here.
The original chateau of Louis's father was on top of a hill. The problem, if you wanted to turn it into a whacking great palace, was that you weren't going to be building on flat land. Louis was told this is not a great place for a big expansion of your father's chateau.
As a monarch with absolute power, Louis wasn't used to being told what to do, and he didn't much like it.
Dépêchez-vous d'en finir, Monsieur Sylvestre. Le temps vous est compté. Cette demeure ne va plus rester longtemps en cet état.
From the outset, Louis was thinking big. He started by hiring the greatest architect of the age, Louis Le Vau, to transform the hunting lodge into the palace of his dreams. Le Vau's plans for the remodeling of Versailles were complete and ready to present to his demanding boss.
Louis certainly knew that what he wanted was a building which had that shock and awe effect. There's absolutely no doubt that he wanted a building that would be sensational.
Le Vau's model was impressive, but had a major flaw. He planned to destroy the old hunting lodge.
C'est là un bâtiment entièrement nouveau, Monsieur Le Vau.
Assurément, Majesté.
The idea of Louis XIV was to keep always the little chateau of his father. So that was a problem for an architect, because architects prefer to destroy everything and to build a new building. So Louis sent the architect away, and he told him, I want this little chateau preserved.
Vous devez construire, mais en agrandissant le bâtiment d'origine. Il me plaît de vivre avec la mémoire de mon père. Faites en sorte que vos plans préservent son château.
With Le Vau sent back to the drawing board, Louis turned his attention to the landscape. He wanted to expand the existing garden, adding ornamental lakes and groves lined with dazzling fountains. But he'd picked an awful site.
There were no views. It's hemmed in by the sides of a valley. And also, Versailles wasn't naturally endowed, the region, with the sort of trees which Louis wanted for his garden.
Louis's chief gardener was the century's most celebrated landscape designer, André Le Nôtre. Versailles would be the greatest challenge of his career.
Comment vous en rendre grâce?
En nous donnant avec vos jardins un avant-goût du paradis.
But the Sun King did not want to wait for his earthly paradise, or for his trees to grow from saplings.
Louis XIV wanted results, and he wanted them fast. This was really a theme of the whole sort of Project Versailles. And the solution was to uproot mature trees from other parts of France and bring them in, and a special contraption was invented, a horse-drawn contraption, which would allow these mature trees to be transported on, as you can imagine, these terribly bad roads.
Louis liked to display his power. After winning a war against Spain, he celebrated with a huge party in the gardens of Versailles. The Sun King's festivities were about more than pleasure. They had real political significance. Louis was slowly turning his new palace into the most important and the most fashionable seat of power in Europe.
The parties at Versailles, they've been described as pagan masses. Fireworks, rides along the canal in gondolas, balls for 3,000 people under the stars, plays, ballets with 100 dancers by Lully, everything you could possibly imagine all at once in this tremendous circus of celebration for the king.
Because Louis was spending more and more time at Versailles, he decided to move his entire government there. To accommodate the new officials, Levaux suggested a brand new idea, keeping the old hunting lodge, but enclosing it with massive new buildings on 3 sides. The design was known as the envelope.
The chateau was preserved, but it was enveloped in this new building in a completely different style, which looked like a palace. What he also did with Levaux was to build pavilions for his ministers. Now, this was very important. What this meant was that for the first time, Versailles could function as a seat of monarchy, a place from which the king could govern.
Building the envelope was a massive task, requiring thousands of workers.
The largest number of workers were 40,000 people at the same time. It was a very dangerous place also because the work to be done was not done in a secure way, of course. It was with accidents and people dying.
Louis was impatient to get the job done quickly. Work went on day and night. Le Nôtre's ambitious plans were finally taking shape, and Louis's dream of creating the most spectacular palace in Europe was slowly becoming a reality.
Louis's great gardener, his real gift, was for rearranging the landscape, basically, and dividing it up on a grid. And then you treat the units within the grid essentially as outdoor rooms. And then you would bring in all sorts of other people, water engineers, sculptors, architects, essentially to furnish these rooms.
L'idée serait d'ajouter un nouvel axe au Grand Canal.
On dirait la Sainte Croix. Voilà une pieuse idée de la géométrie, monsieur le nôtre. Elle nous ravit et nous apportera bonheur.
The envelope around the old hunting lodge was complete. Louis's ministers were installed in their new apartments, and the king began governing from Versailles. Now, Louis decided he would make the palace his permanent home, and insisted that leading French nobles come and live there too.
Allons, il est temps maintenant que l'on prenne toutes les dispositions pour que Versailles devienne la demeure du roi de France.
There's no question that for Louis, the nobility, particularly the great court nobility, were an essential aspect of his kingship. They surrounded him with glory and status. This is a state where the ultimate decider on granting favour or refusing favour is in the hands of the king. If you were looking for a military command, if you were looking for favours for many of your clients, supporters and family, then the way to achieve this was by getting access to Louis, and to a lesser extent by gaining access to the ministers around Louis.
But housing all the nobles would mean yet more building work. Louis's finance minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, worried about the cost.
Du grand commun à l'aile du Midi, faites en sorte que tous trouvent la place qui leur revient.
Versailles manque d'appartements. Sire, il va falloir encore construire...
Bien, construisons, Colbert. Construisons.
Si le roi est à Versailles, si rien ne peut se faire en France sans passer par le roi, toute la noblesse sera à Versailles.
Louis wanted the nobility at Versailles in order that he could keep an eye on them. The message he wanted to give to his nobles was this: you don't need to rebel to get what you want. What you have to do is come and pay your court to me.
Sire, voici le château en son état.
Original architect Louis Levaux died before his project was complete. His replacement, Jules Mansart, had ideas of his own.
Mansart had the great idea to have big wings each side of the envelope to make some accommodation for the princes and the court. So it was a huge design, and I think he had a great idea of what would be a great palace for a great king.
Si Votre Majesté veut bien se donner la peine de se pencher sur l'une des fenêtres, elle verra alors notre projet plus en détail.
Mansart's most ambitious proposal was to build a fabulous gallery lined with mirrors.
En réfléchissant la lumière du soleil dans la galerie, ils ne laisseront plus aucune place à l'ombre. Elle aura toujours vue sur les jardins. Monsieur Mansart, nous apprécions grandement votre art. Sire, merci.